Okay, well, our last speaker of the session is Steve Matson. Steve is a retired self-employed plumbing and heating contractor turned freelance botanical photographer. He earned a BS in physical science at Sierra Nevada College and an MA in philosophy from UC Santa Barbara. While having no formal biological or botanical training, Steve is motivated by a desire to capture good diagnostic images that might prove useful to the botanical community. And I got to tell you, I chuckled pulling this bio together for you, Steve, because I think we've gone way past the might prove. Is there anybody here who has not seen one of Steve's photos? Okay, well, Paul Kirk lives under a rock, so besides him... Okay, that's the only one. I mean, we're glad to have him here. This is super cool. His current work includes creating more iNaturalist posts and some limited new submissions to CalFlora and CalPhotos. For his talk this afternoon, Steve will share the story of Carex holmgreniorum, a new Carex for California from Mono County. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Greetings, people. You know, I have to say, I find this group, they're both handsome, brilliant, and accomplished. That's collectively, so don't let that go to your head. My talk, initially I had planned a lightning talk for last year, but my entry wasn't chosen, and as such, I'm going to get a little bit fuller picture of my discovery. But I wanted to start out with a little bit of a preamble because I had this sort of vision of how of new discoveries and sort of different categories. And the first category is perfectly exemplified by Rob Preston, who just talked and gave his talk, as told by him just prior to mine. In this instance, Rob goes out in the field by himself, collects plants by himself, does all the ancillary research by himself, publishes news pieces by himself, and he illustrates them, right, as well, all by himself, and then comes to Chico to tell us about how by himself. Anyway, my hat's off to you, Rob, and there are a couple of other categories. The first is an example of plants discovered by field botanists or people like me. I call myself what camera guy gets lucky sometimes, and described by others. This is an example of this was this is what Nemacletus or Nemacletus inuensis, first described by Nancy Morin and Tina Ayers in 2020 in a Madronio paper. I was pleased to play a part in the discovery of this new taxon. Something to be aware of was that come March 8th, there will be a Jepson workshop talking about some of the revisions to the E-flora, and we'll probably include this plant. So very, very happy about. Well, here we go. Another example, another category. Oops. Well, I guess that's it. That doesn't look right. Well, anyway, another category is arrange extensions, of which mine is one. Anyway, and an example of this was Tim Messick and Ann Howell found this plant in Mono County recently. It's a tiny annual lupin. I don't think you'll find a daintier lupin in all of North America. That's my opinion. Those are, oftentimes it's just a single floret. Those are my fingertips, taken at Travertine Hot Springs near Bridgeport. This is Lupinus uncialis, or Lilliput lupin. There are some records in California and the Modoc Plateau, but in 2023 it was found in Mono County for the first time. And let me add that Ann Howell is working on the flora of Mono County, and that Tim Messick has contributed to methodically botanize the Bodie Hills region of California for decades, maintaining a website dedicated to the natural history of the Bodie Hills as an outgrowth of his regional flora master's thesis begun in the late 80s. I think that's just amazing that somebody does a regional flora, then keeps going back and providing more information to the public. thank you for indulging me in that diversion. Now let's take a look at a particular range extension of that's the focus of my talk. I'll direct you to a certain location in California that is barely within what's maybe called Northern California, still about the same latitude as San Jose. So the upper arrow, that was by itself. Upper arrow is Chico, and then I'm going to direct you to this location in Eastern California. Getting confused here with my notes. Anyway, back up. Anyway, just north of Bishop is an area in Mono County, which is overseen by the BLM, and it's called Fish Slough. Within Fish Slough is something called BLM Spring, where there's been a lot of biological research has occurred. Oh, this is automatically running along. Interesting. Anyway, back in no, never mind. Whoa, I didn't touch anything. Oh, okay. Honest. Hang on while okay, there we go. Anyway, this spring is easily reachable by motor vehicles, no helicopter required. Yes, I'm making allusions to a certain Phacelia species that was that included a story about one, right? This is an image of BLM Spring within Fish Slough from ground level, looking west toward the crest of the Sierra Nevada mountain. Whoa, no. There we go. That's kind of faded. Anyway, this is a group of people looking at the sort of the headwaters of BLM Spring. Now let us go to Let's go to May 31st, 2013. I'd been to BLM Spring before. I'd taken Jeff Greenhouse here in 2013, and that's a picture of him. I got that from John Game, and I wanted to show him some rare species because there are a lot of rare species at BLM Spring, and so I took him there. And he usually looks like this, with carrying around his Jepson manual, and not the desert manual, the full manual. And here he is trying to key out a Circium at Fish Slough. Now, while I was there. Oh, wait, sorry. I wanted to show him some of the rare species. And so this first is Astragalus lentiginosus variety pisonensis. It's the Fish Slough milkvetch. First described by Rupert Barnaby in 1977. As well as the silver leaf milkvetch, Astragalus argophyllus, variety argophyllus. So while I was there, this is 2013, I noticed this the sedge growing up out of the salts in this alkaline meadow. I took photographs of it, but did not, try to identify it. Until later on, I made an iNaturalist observation from images on my computer, and that's as far as it got. Now, some people suggested maybe Nebraskensis, and nobody was terribly happy with that. And so it kind of languished as such until Matt Berger, also known as Sheriff Woody, PCT, found it again in 2023 and noticed that it had trigonous achenes and other characters and thought it was the same thing that I saw right in 2013. So that finally got me off my butt about a month later. And so I went back and with my 2 dogs there, those dark shapes in the background, and to collect vouchers, take more photographs, and then bring them home to try to see if I could identify it. So it was a nice nice tufted plant, short rhizomes. So what is it, about 23 inches tall? And thankfully, it had three stigmas, which is helpful because it kind of keeps you out of a difficult group in Carex. And those are some of the Perigynia there on the right. Now, if you're really into Carex, right now you'll be noticing you got about 2 millimeters in length, right? And then a beak of maybe 0.5 millimeter, and I know you're counting veins, both the front and the back. If you're a fan of Carex, anyway, Lawrence, Barbara. So what did I do? I went to the Jepson manual and started going through the keys. Unfortunately, it didn't lead me anywhere that was satisfying. So, but I had the advantage of there being a master's thesis flora project that was published back in the 80s by Holly Forbes and Wayne Farron and I think it's Richard Holler. And that was that going to be helpful? Well, they had 3 species of Carex listed on it, and it was none of those, right? And I was going to tease if Holly's here today. Is Holly Forbes here? Not this time. Okay, I wanted to tease her. It's like, how could you miss this plant? Fortunately, so what do you do when you can't find something in the Jepson manual? So what I did is there's the adjoining to the east regional flora is the Intermountain flora. And I want you to notice that it's by Arthur Quancrist, Arthur Holmgren, Noel Holmgren, James Reveal, and Patricia Holmgren. 3 Holmgrens right in there. So fortunately, it keyed out in Intermountain flora to something called Carex periana, and I was very happy about that because that helped. Helped a lot. And there were excellent, as you know, illustrations in the Intermountain flora. But that story didn't end there. Barbara Wilson had suggested it might have been something else. And so it turns out that in 2013, let's see, actually I can't remember when this was published, but it turns out that Anthony Resnick and David Murray had reevaluated the Carex periana complex and described a new species called it Carex holmgreniorum. Now I'm really going to have to look for the correct sequence of notes. Okay, so Carex holmgreniorum, right. So a quote from the paper: "This is a distinctive species whose lack of recognition was due to its relative rarity. It is uncommon and local endemic to the northern Great Basin and western portion of the Colorado Plateau. About the specific epithet, holmgreniorum, it was chosen to honor the contributions of 3 persons: Art Holmgren, his son Noel Holmgren, and Noel's wife Patricia Holmgren. Those were the 3 names I wanted you to notice on the front cover of the Intermountain volume that, and quoting Tony Resnick, we're on a first-name basis now, by the way. It was fun. I sent him some collections for him to verify. And within 24 hours, it was amazing. He got right back to me. Yep, that's it. And that was great. I celebrated sort of inside. And they took the Holmgrens together have collected the species several times and whose scholarship has contributed so much to our knowledge of the Intermountain flora. Now, this is a map of from IRHN and detailing where collection data or collection locations in Nevada and Utah and a little bit of Colorado. My collection is the black arrow there down in California, and the red arrow is the closest collection site, and that's in Monitor Valley, Lander County. Should have stapled my notes together. Anyway, this most of the is Jerry Team here today from Nevada? No, he didn't make it either. Anyway, most of these collections, usually he comes to these symposiums. He's the curator up in UNR Herbarium in Reno, and he made that collection at a place called Diana's Punch Bowl. And if you're a big fan of hot springs, you might know that location. Otherwise, for most people in California, this is kind of a remote area, seldom visited. So, welcome to California, Carex holmgreniorum. That's the essence of my talk. Now, even as I said that, it's not like I opened the door and it walked in, right? It's probably been there for, who knows, at least 40 years, and maybe thousands. Now, when I decided to publish a noteworthy collection, it was asked, or one of the reviewers asked me, what are the threats to this plant? And I thought, well, there's barbed wire fencing around it, right? And I thought, okay, cattle is an obvious answer. And so I talked to some land managers. One said, well, there are no grazing allotments around there. It's not because of cattle. And then somebody else says, I can't tell you how many times I've seen cattle that have somehow gotten out and gotten through fences and other barriers and so on. However, I have a hypothesis, and which is probably true, is that there is a state and federally listed fish at this location that lives in this spring called the Owens pupfish. Since I can't read my notes, who can read that? Sophronodon radiosus. And I think that's probably why this area was fenced, just to keep traffic, human and cattle traffic, to a minimum. Now, so it has the advantage, of course, is that also it protects the pupfish, but it also protects this one, or at least the first known collection of Carex holmgreniorum in California as well. Now, a reviewer also asked me what the potential threats are. Well, the threats, I did a little bit more research, and I realized that it just isn't, cattle and so on. It's groundwater pumping. And what's true about much of, this is a slide I stole from Andy Zidon's and Naomi Faraga's paper about springs in the Mojave, in southern Mojave, and just all of Mojave, I guess, and Nevada, and about how important springs are to the biological diversity in that region. And it was something like Andy Zidon in one of his talks talked about like 22% of the plant species. Time for questions. Okay. All right. That sort of wraps it up. I just wanted to mention how important the springs of the Mojave are, and BLM Spring is one of them. And Naomi Frog is continuing to do research there. Okay. Questions? Thank you.
We can take one if we got one. We could take one question for Steve if we have one, and then don't go anywhere because we have lightning talks coming right up. No break. Here comes Kristen. Anybody got a question for Steve? Well, you're going to get off easy.
Maybe. Oh, good.
All right, buddy.
All right, thanks. All right, thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, Steve.